Your Humanities Half Hour is brought to you by the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.
Welcome to Your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry, and today we're focusing on the island of Rota in the Marianas, talking specifically about the Rota Special Resource Study conducted by the National Park Service. And our guests today are Barbara Alberti. She's the Superintendent for American Memorial Park and War in the Pacific National Park on Guam, and also Jonathan Gervais. He's the Outdoor Recreational Planner with Park Planning and Environmental Compliance under the National Park Service. Barbara, Jonathan, thank you for making time to share with us today about this study.
Thank you for having us.
Let's start at the beginning. What is the Rota Special Resource Study all about?
So the Rota Special Resource Study evaluates the eligibility of Rota to be designated as a National Park Service park or other designation. The study collects information about the resources on Rota, and then we evaluate those resources against congressionally mandated criteria that we have. And then we also look at the potential for visitor enjoyment and efficient management. And we analyze the feasibility and appropriateness for different management options. Basically, in summary, the Rota Special Resource Study is a study to evaluate the resources on Rota against the criteria for including those resources in the National Park Service system.
I think for a lot of us, this study first came to our attention recently with the press releases you put out requesting public comment, but it's actually been a couple years in the work. How did this study get initiated?
So Congressman Sablon introduced legislation in 2010, which the U.S. Congress eventually passed in 2014. And that authorized a study of the prehistoric, historic, and limestone forest sites on the island of Rota. So it started really in earnest for the Park Service in 2017 when we came out to the islands, conducted meetings with the public, sent out information. There was meetings on Guam, Saipan, and Rota that were attended by over 200 people. And we received public comments on the initial kickoff for the project. So essentially the legislation was passed in 2014 and the project started in earnest in 2017.
It's kind of amazing, in my opinion, that the creation potentially of a park, it comes to the attention of Congress. You know, this is the highest level of government. What is the connection between Congress and the National Park Service and the work you do to conduct these kind of studies?
So Congress is our client, if you will. They are the ones who said to the Park Service and passed a law, which was signed into law, that we will conduct a study of places for inclusion in the Park Service. And usually what happens is Congress will kind of lump them together. They'll say, hey, we want to look at 10 or 15 places. And then they'll put that in one bill, and usually that bill is attached to another big bill. In this case, it was a Defense Authorization Act. So it was a really big bill, all this stuff in it. But part of that bill was, hey, Park Service, go look at these 10, 15 sites and come back and tell us whether you think, under the professional opinion and under the criteria that's been designated by Congress, whether these places rise to the level of a National Park Service unit. Now, there's lots of different types of units, which we can get into, but that's basically the relationship that Congress has with the agency, directing us to conduct these studies and then letting us go do the work, and then we report directly back to them.
So you've recently issued the study, which includes significant findings that you've made and as well as some options, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the half of the show about what might be possible as far as managing these resources. But let's talk first about what are some of the significant findings of the study, starting with the unique indigenous Chamorro culture that is so strongly represented in Rota.
So just one clarification. We haven't finished the study.
Okay.
We released preliminary findings and alternative concepts. So we're still working on it. We haven't finished all the evaluation, but we wanted to present these initial thoughts and initial ideas and alternatives to the public so we could start the discussion. And we could really have a good and honest discussion. And what we found on Rota is pretty amazing. The archaeological sites related to the Chamorro culture are amazingly well preserved. They're intact. We looked at over 26 sites, which included, if I just look here, Latte village sites, rock art sites, rock shelters, artifact scatters, and other types that were located both inland and on the coast. So the sites are have excellent integrity, the concentration of unique and individually significant sites, the diversity and density of sites, the potential to yield information is exceptional, and they're pretty much some of the best preserved Chamorro sites in the Mariana Islands, for sure.
Were you personally part of the team that went there to conduct the study, Jonathan?
Unfortunately, I was not. We were supposed to come out this May to look at the sites again and to do some more evaluation, but obviously the events of COVID brought those plans to a stall.
Things have changed a lot for everybody because of COVID. What are your initial thoughts personally in your experience looking at probably other places in the country that have indigenous artifacts and structures? What are your thoughts on what Rota has as far as indigenous Chamorro heritage and artifacts still remaining?
Yeah. And so I've read a lot of the direct reports and talked to a lot of the folks who were on the ground out there. And they're just really exceptional and unique resources. The quality, and what we call integrity, which means they're intact. They haven't been bulldozed. They haven't been disturbed. Rota was one of the islands that escaped major devastation in World War II. And so the archaeological sites have a great amount of material, and they have a great amount to tell us. They have a great story. That's really what I see in them, is that there's all these layers to uncover to tell the story of thousands of years of folks living on this beautiful island. And there's just a lot there that's in great shape and has not been destroyed or damaged, and will reveal a complex and very interesting story, hopefully for the Park Service to tell at some point, and if not, for everybody to enjoy.
Definitely. I know in the report I saw some pictures from Mutsong Latte site, and that's really one of my favorite places on Rota. Like you said, it's intact, and you go there and you can just envision the village that was once there by the coastline and all the latte houses and everything. Another thing that you guys conducted research on were the World War II side of Rota's history. What did you find there? So
there are two World War II Japanese defense complexes located on the island. And those as well are in excellent integrity. I was reading some reports where folks have gone up there and found, like it was just yesterday when soldiers left those sites. They still have their cans of food and other things there on site. It's in excellent shape as well. And so it's got a lot to tell us. And it complements the other stories that we tell related to World War II in the Pacific. And maybe Barbara can add on to this, but we tell the story at Pearl Harbor, and we tell the story at War in the Pacific on Guam, American Memorial on Saipan, and this would be another opportunity for us and to tell that story, but also to expand our knowledge and understanding of what occurred during World War II.
And each of those places that you've mentioned gives a slightly different perspective on the war. You know, what happened in Pearl Harbor is not the same as what happened in Guam, is not the same as what happened in Saipan or on Rota. So there's, like you said, there's a unique story related to our World War II history there. Another area I would say that the study focused on, which was kind of a surprise to me, was the environmental aspect, because, well, now that I think about it, you think of Yellowstone Park and the environment there that makes the park so well known. But what was significant about the environment in Rota that you found?
We didn't find grizzly bears, but we did.
No geysers?
No geysers. No, the limestone forests, and also this reflects, that Rota hasn't been extensively developed, or infrastructure hasn't been built through the area. So it has large tracts of limestone forests that retain that are intact and retain their integrity. 52% of the island of Rota is covered by limestone forests. Of those, we went in and worked with other agencies that have done mapping there, and we identified the areas that have the highest quality stands of limestone forests. So what that means, they're older stands. They have diversity of flora and fauna that live there. In fact, there's 16 threatened and endangered species that rely on Rota's limestone forests. So through that process of looking at these sites, looking at these high quality stands limestone forests, we identified areas that retained the greatest level of diversity and retained the greatest level of possibility for it to teach us about these ecosystems. That's another important part of what we always want to do when we look at natural areas. So we identified those areas, and then we included some of them in one of the alternatives and more in the other alternatives. So the limestone forests, excellent condition, excellent quality. A lot of the threatened and endangered species reside there, and that's what we found.
Well, coming up in the second half of the show, we're going to get into the proposed management options that are contained in the plan for comment and discussion at this point. But Barbara, before we do that, is there anything you'd like to say about what the study documents as far as the significant cultural, historic, and environmental findings there in Rota, and maybe how it relates to the two other parks in the Marianas and Guam?
First, I wanted to also just put in context your earlier question about how come the National Park Service and Congress got involved in this. Originally, back in 2004, the Senator Songal from Rota, he actually requested the National Park Service conduct a study about both the cultural sites as well as the environmental limestone forest areas. And the Park Service did sort of a mini study back then, and even at that time noted how exceptional some of these resources were. So I actually have had the privilege of going to Rota a couple of times, and one of those times I was able to go out with the Historic Preservation Office staff on the island, and that was just amazing, the tour that they gave me of as Nieves and Motong and Hospital Cave, and then of course also up on the Savannah, some of the World War II sites and things like that. So I agree, obviously, with the findings that it's really significant. And many of those types of resources are not well represented in the National Park Service because exactly what you said, that Rota was much less impacted by both Spanish colonial influence as well as World War II. So in particular, limestone forests, even though the Warren Pacific National Historical Park here on Guam has some limestone forests, they are not of similar size and quality as on Rota.
Well, I would definitely agree with you that seeing the sites in Rota with a local guide is the absolute best way to see these places that we're talking about. It's really a treasure. And if any of our listeners haven't been there yet, hopefully our chat today will inspire you to go there and see what Rota has to offer. We're chatting today about the Rota Special Resource Study conducted by the National Park Service, and we'll be back after this break.
Did you know that you can donate up to $5,000 to the Humanities Council through the CNMI Education Tax Credit Program? Donations from individuals and corporations qualify and can be used to offset your local wage and salary tax, BGRT, and earnings tax. Call our office at 235-4785 to see how you can support humanities programs in our community and obtain a tax credit for your donation. Sizuus Maasi, Olomai, and thank you.
Welcome back to Your Humanities Half Hour. We're talking about the Rota Special Resource Study today, and our guests are Superintendent Barbara Alberti of American Memorial Park and War in the Pacific National Park in Guam, and also Jonathan Gervais, Outdoor Recreation Planner with Park Planning and Environmental Compliance with the National Park Service. Let's talk a little bit about the three alternative concepts that this study presents and that people are welcome to comment on. The first, I'm sorry, on a personal note, I love the first concept, which is kind of like what I would call the do nothing concept, which means take no action, kind of. Am I wrong? I mean, it's always an option not to take any action, but that's kind of it's kind of the way I see the first option. But go ahead, Jonathan, maybe you can give us a little more informed description of these alternative concepts.
Well, thank you. The first concept is the no action alternative, just as you indicated. But there is some things that we're working on that we wanted to highlight that are going to happen no matter what. And one of those is that our cultural resource staff is preparing nomination papers for the As Nevis quarry site on Rota to make it a National Historic Landmark. So we're looking at those at that site, and we're evaluating it for that status. So that is part of the no action alternative, and would be a good thing to recognize nationally how important that quarry, As Nevis quarry site is to the country. And in terms of the two concept alternatives that include action, basically we have kind of a smaller one and then a larger one, if you will. But I first want to talk a little bit about some of the concepts that went into the thinking about these alternatives before we kind of jump into what they are. The first is that we really wanted to highlight that we tried to only find public lands or only identify public lands to be included in these major concepts. That was in response to when we came out in 2017, folks indicated that they didn't want private lands included in any of our concepts. So we tried to address that, and we've done our best. Some of the sites are a little tricky, exactly where the lines are of public and private land, but we really wanted to stick to public lands that are currently in there. And we also wanted to show that these alternatives are really partnership-based. Right? None of these alternatives are going to happen unless it's a true partnership between the Rota municipal government, the CNMI government, and the Park Service. We need each other. We need each other to share information, to manage the sites if that happens, and to leverage each other's resources. And any of the action alternatives would require support from both the CNMI and the Rota municipal government. And lastly, we would need a lease or agreement to operate a site on Rota. Since the Park Service cannot buy land in the CNMI, this would have to be a what we call kind of a non-traditional setup for a park, which means we would need some sort of lease or agreement to move forward with either of the action alternatives. So I just want to kind of lay those out as those are the kind of the ground rules that we set for ourselves. So any alternative would require an act of Congress, and there's no time frame for those. But the first alternative we called the Rota National Historical Park concept. And this focused on protecting and interpreting the most important Chamorro archeological resource sites. It was about the site the concept came out to be about 526 hectares, which is about 1,300 acres of land. It would protect the most significant Chamorro archaeological sites, mainly along the eastern shoreline of the island. And it encompasses many of the existing sites that are preserved, like the Chensong Bird Sanctuary, some of the rock art sites, and many of the quarry, some other sites along the eastern seaboard. So the second alternative is called the National Monument or Preserve concept, and it builds upon the previous alternative, includes the lands that were in the first alternative, but builds upon them. And we tried to identify other areas that were in conservation status, and it includes a lot more of the limestone forests. And it includes one of the two World War II Japanese defense complexes. And it includes, from our perspective, includes the three resources that were identified in the legislation, the prehistoric, the historic, and the limestone forests. So this is kind of your catch-all alternative, if you will, the preserve or monument concept. And once again, we'd need to work collaboratively with the CNMI government to protect and preserve these cultural resources. But one of the reasons why we use the word preserve or monument is it gives us a little bit more flexibility of what could be allowed in that site. And we heard a lot of folks want to keep their hunting and collection of traditional medicinal plants from these sites. And so with these other concepts, we have some flexibility to allow those uses if the Park Service were brought into the islands. So that's some of the thinking there. And then so the second alternative concept is about 1,780 hectares or 4,400 acres of land on Rota. So thank you for the opportunity to kind of present the whole picture of the ground rules and then the two concepts that are action concepts.
Thank you also for your description of the concepts. Could you give us a little idea, maybe with examples from other places or even American Memorial Park, how either the concept of the Rota National Park or the National Monument and Preserve would work as far as the partnership between the federal and local government?
There needs to be an agreement. Right? There needs to be either some sort of cooperative agreement or a lease. And in that would be the opportunity to discuss NPS management and any the desires of the local community for use. And it'd be a way to kind of codify the understanding between the local government and the federal government on how we're going to work together, share resources or share information, and what uses would be allowed. So I see that process, if this does move forward, that process being the opportunity to really negotiate, if you will, how we're going to treat each other, how we're going to operate on the island, how we would work together, and really get down into the details of making sure that both sides are heard and both sides get the result that they want, which is a well-functioning and great site, preservation and interpretation and education, all those pieces that go along with it.
Could you tell us real briefly, number one, where people can access the study online and submit their comments, and also what are the next few steps in the process?
So folks can, you can just go on to Google and type in Rota SRS and you'll get right to the website for the study. It's https://parkplanning.nps.gov/Rota study. But it's easy to find on the web. And directly on that website, that's where we're encouraging folks to comment. All the documents are there, and we're encouraging folks to comment right there because it's the easiest for us to process those comments and make sure we collect them. That's the best way that we encourage folks to comment. If that doesn't work, we have on that website, there's an email. You can send comments directly to the email if you like. And we did include in the newsletter, we included a hard copy of a comment form. So if folks want to write and they don't have a computer or they don't have access, they can write directly onto that form, and those can be dropped off at the Rota Mayor's office or at our sites on the other islands.
So after the comment period, which ends on October 26th, what would be the next few steps after that? After
that, we will take all the public comments. We'll go through them all. We'll review all our public meeting videos and capture what folks said, and that'll help inform us to finish the report. So we're going to take that information. We have a couple more pieces to finish on the report, and then we're going to submit that up through the Department of the Interior, and we'll probably have some back and forth through the Department of the Interior, and then it'll go from the Department of the Interior to Congress. And we're trying to get all this done in 2021. So we hope to have this finished in 2021. And then at that point, it's going to really come down to conversations between the representatives of Rota and representatives of CNMI and Congress and the Department of the Interior to see if this is going to develop into something further.
Well, thank you both so much for the information you've shared today and your time. Any final thoughts before we go?
I just want to say a quick thanks to all the people who participated in the meetings and all the people who are commenting. I'm sitting over here near San Francisco, and we need to hear from folks on the ground out there what they're thinking about these ideas, what they're thinking about these alternatives. It really is important for us to hear the voice of the people of Rota and the CNMI. So please send me your comments. We look forward to hearing from you. And just a sincere thanks.
Barbara?
I echo what Jonathan said. It's so important for us to hear from the people of Rota. And I wanted to also emphasize that although we will be posting various updates on our Facebook page for American Memorial Park, we hope that people will use the more official comment form, or as Jonathan said, on the website, or emailing rota_study@nps.gov to provide their comments. I also believe that Mr. Ogle from the Indigenous Affairs Office is planning to perhaps engage the people of Rota in a couple of weeks, a little bit more with some dialogue. And if so, I hope to be able to participate then too. So if people haven't heard enough, there may still be some more opportunities to learn a little bit more about this, and especially to provide their thoughts to us on this really important special resource study for the island of Rota.
Well, thank you both again very much.
Thank you.
We've been talking today about the Rota Special Resource Study, and our guests have been Superintendent Barbara Alberti of American Memorial Park and War in the Pacific National Park, and Jonathan Gervais, Outdoor Recreation Planner and of Park Planning and Environmental Compliance, both with the National Park Service. This has been your Humanities Half Hour. I'm Catherine Perry.
This program was supported by a We the People grant awarded to the Northern Marianas Humanities Council from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Northern Marianas Humanities Council.